to this first webinar of the series of 5 ones, which is called What is an Inclusive Youth Organization? My name is Indra Ugutiene. I'm representing Global Citizens Academy, which is a non-governmental organization based in Lithuania, in Kaunas. And today I'm going to introduce you with some key aspects what us and our colleagues from the project Be Inclusive think what a inclusive youth organization means. So I'm going to share my screen now. I hope you see it. Okay, so what are we going to talk today about? Today we are going to answer the following questions. First of all, why do we need to create systems and culture and a culture of inclusion in youth organizations? How do we understand what is an inclusive youth organization is? And what are the indicators of an inclusive youth organizations? So these will be the three main questions to answer during today's webinar. It will not take more than 1 hour, so anytime you have any questions or have any comments, so feel free to write them or to ask your questions in the chat box. Okay? So before we start, I see quite some people have joined our webinar. I would like, just for warming up, I would like to ask you to share some of your thoughts. What keywords do best describe for you what an inclusive youth organization is? So here in the screen, you see the code. So you need to enter menti.com and use the code 65003470 and write 3 of your keywords what an inclusive youth organization means to you. Okay, if you have any difficulties to access the Mentimeter, just let me know, but I hope it works. Okay, we see the first responses coming. Anyone else would like to express your thoughts, your ideas, what an inclusive youth organization means to you? Great, we see more responses coming. So equality, equal opportunities, safety, equal expression, equal access, no discrimination, ensuring human rights. Opportunities, gender equality. Let's wait for some more moments so everybody could have the possibility to express your opinion. Okay, so I'm counting to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you very much for your ideas. Of course, first of all, and we will see later on during this webinar, inclusiveness in youth organizations is something about equality, about the opportunities, about the safety, about the access to some services and possibilities that the society can provide for young people, and so on and so forth. So just to, okay, we see more freedom of expression, openness, care of needs of the community, working standards. Yes, everything that you have mentioned in these keywords have something to do with the inclusiveness in youth organization. And later on, we will discuss and explore this more. Yes, I see Luca is raising your hand. Yes, Luca.
I really like the question. I would like to share a few things more on what I was writing. I think many organizations, especially in our field, they don't have a specific standard that they will actually follow. And this is about including people time by time, but without a standard, we cannot really say we are following or not a good policy of inclusion. And another interesting thing is we should be more open for the needs of the community rather than priority of programs. And this also, I think, it's sometimes forget in the NGO's agenda.
Yeah, thank you very much, Luca. Very good points that you have raised. First of all, about the needs of the community. Exactly, in these times of, when we really look, and chase for funding of the programs, we really keep forgetting what really the young people in our communities need. And this is something that we need to come back to it and take it into consideration while planning our activities and promoting and fostering inclusion of all young people. So, just to contextualize a little bit of what is an inclusive youth organization, I just want to remind, very universal things about who we are. Every human being on this planet is unique, and I think there will be no objections about it, about the statement. And what is making us unique are a few things: the roles we play in our life, our interests and hobbies, the places we live, our belonging to certain cultural and or social groups of people, the ways we think, the ways we believe in, the things we believe in, some of our life experiences or some life events that make us also unique, and also the desires, who and what I want to be in my life. And this creates a huge diversity, this huge mix in our societies. And here comes the question then: how to make the mix work? How to make the societies work in a way that everybody, in our case young people, feel welcome, feel comfortable, and have the full possibilities, huge possibilities to participate in social and civic life. This is the question, still the rhetoric question that I'm raising, and today we will try to find an answer to it. Here I want to raise another question and try to look for the answers to it together with you. What are the barriers in our societies that restrict young people from participation in social and civic life? And here I would like for you to participate in a very, very quick poll. I would launch it now. I hope you see it. So please just pick three things, three barriers that to you would be the most important and that you think they are the ones that restrict young people from the participation in social and civic life. So let's say 1 minute for you to vote. Okay. Okay. I see you're voting quite actively. Okay, a few more moments and I will close the voting. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I'm ending the poll. And let's look at the results. I hope you see it. So in our group, it is obvious that the most important aspect, the most important barrier is the growing feeling of young people that the institutions and organizations are far away from their realities. So this is something that Luca has also mentioned, that we are chasing some other needs, but we keep forgetting the needs of young people, the needs of our communities. And this is something that you all agree about. The other barrier, inadequate mechanisms to enable youth participation. So again, this clearly states the need, that we really need to look for some relevant tools and instruments how to make youth work facilities and youth work services, different activities and initiatives that are meant for young people accessible for as many young people as possible, and especially those who have a little bit more few opportunities because of some characteristics or some life experiences that they have. The third one, restricted access to decision making for young people. Yes, I think this is also makes that feeling that I'm away from the processes that concerns me. So how can I be active and included if I don't have the chance or the possibility to raise my voice and say what I want and what I need? So this is a very, important thing. And as well as I see from the votes, money, geographic constraints, and the time as the main obstacles for the lasting engagement. So this is something that we will also discuss today, how to ensure and how to take these kind of things into consideration while ensuring that no young person, no young people are left behind. So thank you very much for your votes. And let's move on. So, what is an inclusive youth organization? How can we define a structure as the one who really engages any young person into its activities? Just, I would like to make one remark that while saying an inclusive youth organization, I mean any structure that deals and that provides some services, some activities So an inclusive youth organization would be the one where any young person feels welcome, secure, and comfortable to celebrate their identity, and especially those aspects that make them different from the others, like religious beliefs, cultural backgrounds, social status, financial status, some geographical obstacles that appear because maybe I live in a rural area and so on and so on. So this is the organization, where everybody feels safe to be who you are. Okay? So how to develop an inclusive youth organization? Luca has already noted down very good points about that we sometimes we do something, but is it really enough? And here we also notice that some efforts to foster youth inclusion in our organizations are usually very fragmented. We take into consideration small things and small steps that maybe are required by European programs and so on, but is it done in a systematic way? So we truly believe that in the process of developing an inclusive youth organizations, we first of all need to develop the culture and systems within our organizations, within our structures, that promotes inclusion, equal opportunities, and value the diversity of any young person that attends our activities. And the other important aspect that we need to take into consideration while developing inclusive youth organizations is to work with both young people and our colleagues, the members of our organizations, the volunteers, the paid staff of our organizations, in order to establish and practice a positive and inclusive culture within our structures, within our organizations. And here comes the Be Inclusive project. The Be Inclusive project is the initiative of 5 organizations from 5 different European countries: Lithuania, Bulgaria, Italy, Poland, and Spain. And the project was built on this, belief that we really need to look for the ways how to foster systematic changes in our organizations in order to ensure that no young person is left behind. So the project is an Erasmus Plus strategic project, and it aims to increase diversity, equality, inclusion, and participation of all young people in various youth work activities. And the project itself, it desires to lead youth organizations towards the systematic and transformative change and increase the opportunities for every young person who is especially in the potential risk of social inclusion to actively and meaningfully engage into activities of youth organizations. So these are the 2 main aims, 2 main desires that the project is meant for. And today, later in the later moments, I will simply introduce some of the outcomes, some of the results that we have already developed within the partnership, within this project, and share with you some of the insights of this. So how do we, as the partners of the Be Inclusive project, think what is the path towards the transformative change of youth organizations in order to make them more inclusive and promote this culture and systems of inclusion in youth work? So I could define it as a cycle of processes. First of all, we need to define some indicators that could really say what an inclusive youth organization means. Then we need to go through a self-assessment process and really reflect on our own practices, on our own policies, what goes well, what doesn't go well, what kind of practices, ensure the inclusiveness of young people, what practices do not work. After the self-assessment, we need to take an action that leads to some of the change. And then again, we come back to the indicators and check, what worked, what not, or maybe something else needs to be taken into consideration in this, process of inclusiveness. So within the Be Inclusive project, um, we, the partners, almost 2 years ago, I would say, we made a small-scale qualitative research in order to understand the current situation in our countries, how inclusive our youth organizations are, and what are the needs of youth organizations in order to become more inclusive. And after this research, we came up with a frame of indicators that define for us what an inclusive youth organizations means. So, and we categorized all the indicators in 8 clusters, and they are as follows. So we need to take into consideration some policies and procedures and strategic planning processes in our organizations while talking about inclusion. We need to check the spaces where our activities take place, and we need to take into consideration both physical environment and emotional environment that is being created within the activities of our organizations. We need to think about methodologies and approaches that we apply in our activities, in our daily practices. We need to think of the ways how we reach out to young people in order to engage them fully in our activities. We need to think how we communicate about ourselves, about our organizations, about our participants, and about the outcomes of our activities. We need to think about the capacity building opportunities for staff, volunteers, and members of youth organizations. We need to take into consideration partnerships and network, what kind of networks and what kind of partners could help us to foster, to strengthen the inclusiveness in our organization, and what kind of support and resources we provide, especially for our staff members and volunteers that are responsible for the activities in our organizations. So these are the main areas that can allow us, that can help build us building a systematic approach to inclusiveness, systematic way of how we foster, we promote the inclusiveness in our organizations. Today, I will not be touching all of the categories of these indicators because at least two of the webinars from the series of webinars that we are organizing here will be dedicated to each of them. So I'm not going to talk today about the spaces and about the partnerships and network, but I will try to introduce you with the rest of the indicators and will give you a little bit of taste, how to assess, how to do the self-assessment of those indicators. Okay. So let's start. Let's start with the policies, because usually everything needs to start with some policies and some principles on which our organizations are based. So, and here you see the full list of the indicators from our framework, the framework that our partnership has developed. And I think you see that at the very first, we say that, everything we do, it should be based on some values. And in the context of inclusion, of course, the fundamental values of human rights and the discrimination, inclusion, and diversity should stand in the roots of our organization. And of course, it is also very important to monitor and check constantly if the activities that we do every day are compatible with with the core values of our organizations. And then it comes to the specific policies and procedures that really could help us to realize and to execute the values that we are promoting. And indicators could be as follows. First of all, it would be important to have some either code of conduct or an inclusion policy in our organization that really shows the principles, of how we include and ensure that every young person has the possibility to join our activity. Financial and logistical procedures need to be taken into consideration, especially for those people who come from the disadvantaged communities. The other important indicator would be how the needs of young people, especially from minority and marginalized groups, are taken into consideration in the strategic planning processes of our organization. And the other important aspect and important indicator would be, is the diversity reflected in the staff of our organization? Of course, it's not, most probably it is not always possible, but if possible, we need to take into consideration, even while recruiting staff members, volunteers of our organization, how we ensure diversity in our teams. So how can we assess these kind of indicators? I would like to invite you to do another very, very quick task on Mentimeter. So again, if you go to menti.com and use the code 6235, 6235, sorry, I cannot see it. Just a moment.
We posted in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Also, I can post a link to the chat. So you don't need even to access to enter the code. These are just a few questions from another tool that we have developed in our Be Inclusive project. This is a self-assessment tool that really allows us to understand at what stage of promoting inclusion and for ensuring inclusiveness of our activities we are. So, of course, this is not the entire list of questions that we have put into the self-assessment tool in this category for policies. There are many more, and at the very end of the webinar, I will tell you where you will be able to access the full document and the full output. But here's just a small input for you, just to taste, how this self-assessment could look like. Okay, we already see some responses here. Let's wait for some more. Okay, if we are done, we do not see. Okay, let me see what is wrong, because someone is saying that we are answering a different question. Maybe it will be possible to make it now. For some reason, I cannot share my screen. Okay, yeah, now it's working. Okay, I see some people have voted, but at least I hope that from this task you at least had the chance to understand, you know, what kind of questions need to take into consideration and need to be answered, you know, while talking about policies and so on. Okay, let's move on because we still need to explore some other categories of indicators of an inclusive youth organization. So the other categories that I would like to present you today is about inclusive methodologies and approaches. So what kind of things here need to be taken into consideration while thinking of how to strengthen inclusiveness of our organizations? So first of all, and I think most of you have already noted down while voting, you know, for the key barriers why people do not participate fully or do not engage fully in the social and civic life. So participatory way of planning activities and events. So young people always need to be included, involved in planning the activities that are meant for themselves, and they should have the chance to say what they need and what they want and how they want to be this done. Okay, offering a variety of activities that meet different needs of different groups. As I said at the very beginning, we all are unique, and I think everybody understands that, you know, being trying to do something universally usually doesn't work for some of the groups. So try to think of the ways, you know, of the activities that really meets the needs of different groups of people. Try to adapt activities where appropriate to meet the sensitivities and abilities of the group, because we might have different needs in terms of access of the venue of the meetings, activities, concerts, events, trainings, workshops, so on, some linguistic needs, and many others. Taking into consideration the balance and balancing diversity when recruiting groups and teams, it would be also important in order to make sure that those people, especially from excluded from marginalized groups, have the full possibility to participate. Linguistic needs, I have already mentioned this, especially while planning the activities. Take into consideration minority celebrations and other important dates in order to avoid the situations when we do the activity on the days which are very important to those to some cultural religious groups of young people, and then they do not have the possibility again to engage in the activities. And take into consideration external factors that might limit the participation of young people from rural and remote areas, like schedules of public transportation or some things like that, in order to ensure that they have the possibility to be in your activity. Okay, and here I see some technical issues, so I will maybe skip the questions skip the questions, or I will try to show them in a different way. Okay, never mind. Let's skip it. Okay, let's move forward. Let's talk about another important aspect, important category in our framework of indicators of an inclusive youth organization, which is outreach. So how do we reach out to young people and motivate them to engage in our activities? So these are 4 indicators that we need to take into consideration. So first one is about visibility and recruitment efforts that need to consider specific needs of young people from minority and marginalized group in terms of form, language, information channels, accessibility, and many other factors that that are important in order to reach out to those who really have some specific needs or fewer opportunities to understand the universal language of our, let's say, promotional materials and so on. Also, we need to take some proactivity. We need to be proactive in order to reach young people, especially from minority and marginalized group. Like usual practices are not enough, so we need to put some extra efforts to reach them out. Additional efforts to access the people as well as to motivate them to join your organization, to join your activity, needs to be taken into consideration. And the other important thing, engage with the partner organizations that work with minority and marginalized group. So partnerships are important in order to strengthen our outreach efforts. One more thing, one more category that is also very important is communication, both the communication that happens within our organizations, between our members, staff, volunteers, and so on, and external communication that is meant mainly for the promotion of our activities, for reaching out with our target groups, with the young people that we want to engage in our activities and so on. So first of all, in regards to internal communication, there should be a shared knowledge about the inclusion activities that are happening in our organizations. It is also important that there is a common understanding of the need of being inclusive. So these the values, the importance of inclusiveness needs to be clearly communicated among the team within our organization. And of course, use of inclusive language, even within our organizations, among the team members of our organizations, is also crucially important. When it comes to external communication, we need to make sure that we use very diverse communication channels to reach different audiences. So we need to really think of which are the best ways to communicate about us, about our activities, about our values, especially with those groups who are potentially to be left behind the youth, the activities of our organizations, of youth work activities. Then the message that is communicated by your organizations need to take into account the needs of different groups in terms of language, in terms of clarity, in terms of other things. Maybe the language needs to be simplified, especially if we want to engage, let's say, young people who have some, hearing issues, language issues. We need to take into consideration if the young people in your community can speak and fully understand your local language, and so on and so forth. The same applies to the inclusive language. And then the message that we communicate to young people, it has to encourage all of them to get interested and involved in the activities. Here it is important as well to note down that anti-discriminatory or inclusive clause is one of the solutions, how to do it. Saying in our communication materials that our activities are open for any young person, so whoever you are can come, would be really important. The other indicator that needs to be taken into consideration is that young people from marginalized groups need to be actively involved in designing and delivering the message. The message should be created by young people themselves. And last but not least, the process of developing the message and its content should not reinforce stereotypes, especially while speaking and communicating the things about the sensitive issues, about sensitive topics, about the young people that have some special needs, that have some fewer opportunities. So really, we need to find a language which avoids stereotypes from our communication measures. Okay, I will skip once again the task because it doesn't seem it is working very well technically. And let me move to the last two categories of indicators that define an inclusive youth work structure and inclusive youth organization. So capacity building, it is always very important to put some efforts and invest in the teams of our organizations, in the staff and volunteers, in interns, members of our organizations, and especially in the field of inclusiveness. So what kind of things we need to ensure? That there is a periodical training for all staff members, volunteers on inclusive issues. We need to make sure that we have a competence assessment system within the organization and the aspects of inclusion as they are as well. We need to think of some reflective learning practices where the issues of inclusion can be addressed, discussed, and some solutions could be found. So let's say such practices as reflection groups, supervisions, intervisions could be very important in order to, to create this culture within the team that and this safe space for the team to share, what concerns them, what kind of issues, what kind of challenges they face, and try to find some of the solutions, how to deal with them as a group, as a team of our organizations. And the last important thing would be participating in some capacity building activities related to inclusion and inclusiveness of our organizations that are organized by other organizations, by our partners, some institutions, and so on. Again, it allows us widening the horizons, widening our understandings and perceptions, how we need to deal with young people that have some, specificities, while working with them, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then last but not least, the category which we call support and resources. So there should be a few things that need to be taken into consideration. That we have a support structure which is available and accessible and helps us to facilitate the inclusion work and strengthen inclusiveness in our organizations. For example, we have some contacts and possibilities to ask for the for help from interpreters if we have some, if we want to engage with young people from different ethnical, cultural groups, access to cultural mediators, access to support of supervision, therapies, and so on. This is very, very important. Then also we need to think about resources, especially financial resources that are allocated in each activity, and we need to consider and take into account the needs of young people from minority and marginalized groups. Let's say plan some maybe advanced resources for bringing them to the activity from rural areas, ensuring, you know, the engagement of people who can support them in participation, and so on and so forth. Efforts, we need to take efforts to make and to obtain financial support to make spaces and activities accessible and available for people, especially with the from marginalized groups. And then we need to make sure that the resources, learning resources, development resources are available for our staff members, volunteers of our organizations, and they are shared among them. So this is just a very, very small part of what we have already developed within the Be Inclusive project. And all the intellectual outputs, including the framework of indicators that I have already introduced, the self-assessment tool, unfortunately, we could not successfully try at least some pieces, some elements of it, and the guide how really implement some systematic changes within our organization will be very, very soon available on the project website, inclusiveyouthwork.eu. And of course, all the updates when the intellectual outputs will be released will be also announced in our Facebook page, inclusive.wy, youthwork. Okay, it's still not there. Yeah, we are a little bit late with it, but very, very soon, hopefully by the end of the year, they will be uploaded and you will have the full access to these materials. So follow us, follow our Facebook page, regularly check the project website, and as soon as materials are there, feel free to take them and try them out within your organizations. And I would like to conclude this webinar with one very last question. What supports do you need? What kind of supports do you need to make your organization more inclusive? What kind of things, apart the materials that I have already introduced to you, you would need in order to foster and strengthen the culture of inclusiveness in your organizations? So how to do it, how to share your thoughts? Yeah, feel free to share it, to write it in a chat, or you can simply raise your hand and say it out loud. Okay, a few moments for that, for this. Yes, Vladi.
Yes, I took this question very seriously, And I was thinking, I think we are doing good. Our organization is doing good in terms of practices, but also while we were working on the indicators. But now again, when I was looking at the presentation and listening to you, I realized that we do have a lot of practices we use to try to, I'm sure we can do better, but we do have a lot of practices in place to try to ensure equal access to different young people. But they are practices, they're not really policies. They are policies in the sense that we do it quite consistently. We apply them quite consistently, but they're not really written down. And kind of works for us because we are a small team, but it's definitely not the sustainable thing to do, considering that people change and people join, and we're supposed to train our volunteers in all of our policies that we don't really do. So back to your question, I think what we need is definitely time and resources. And I think this is this would be the main challenge for many organizations that that want to make their operations more inclusive, is to find the time and resources to actually invest in it, because it does take time and resources. And youth work is in general underfunded. So I think this will be the challenge. Well, first we need to make sure organizations are willing to do so, but when they do, that they can actually allocate some time and resource beyond all the projects that they run in parallel and all the deadlines that are around, to actually make time to do some reflection work, and then to invest in changing policies and things like that. So what we need, I think we need time and resources in our case, but I think others can probably relate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vladi. I completely agree with you because, while running and jumping from activity to activity, we simply need to find the time when we stop and really reflect on what we do, how we do, and do we really take into consideration the things that are necessary in order to promote and strengthen this cultural inclusiveness in our work. So yeah, I completely agree with you that time and resources are crucially important. I see Davile is right that we need more motivated people working in this field. Yes, I think it is very important, to have people who really have the passion to work with young people and really have this internal values within their own personalities, respect for diversity, respect for differences, and many, many other things. Anti-discrimination training for staff of an organization is crucial. Yes, as well, I do agree with Darek in this sense, because first of all, we really need to understand, I think, why inclusion is so important and what does it give, what kind of added value it gives for both organization and especially young people that we are working with. Then I see one more comment from Michaela. My organization has the more financial resources for buying more materials, implication society members, and creation new jobs. Okay, thank you very much, Michaela. So more resources, more materials, so are also important. And Thea is also reflecting and saying that we need a very straight collaboration with other stakeholders, especially authorities who believe and work for inclusion. So I think we will have it will be the last webinar in our series that will be dedicated for the partnerships and network, and we will have the chance to explore more, what we need to do in order to strengthen the partnerships and create this, the bubble, let's say the bubble for inclusion, and to make sure that really there are many, parts and bodies and authorities and organizations that really care about the same thing. Thank you very much. Anyone else to share your thoughts? Luca?
I will just say that it's also important that we don't forget the sustainability. We don't have illimited budget. And a lot of time we do have to face a lot of problems of young people, even those that are not concerned NGOs, but are concerned the rest of society. The fact that politics and political programs doesn't really involve that much their dreams. They don't find really themselves in. But what I mean is that most of the time, the commission, the agencies, everyone is looking, the NGOs, like Harry Potter, that with a little stick and some paper, you can finally engage young people in social and local actions. I think this is also a theme that we should raise. Resources are not enough for the kind of job that we need. Young people need to have all the things that you present very well. And to do that, we need a lot of resources to engage them, to train them, and to guide them to this process.
Thank you very much, Luca. So once again, yeah, about the time and resources, you know, that needs, that requires. And the other thing that just came to my mind while listening to you was about the advocacy, you know, showcasing to the key stakeholders of youth work, of youth policies, you know, how important the work of the organization is, and especially how important the inclusion work in youth organizations is. I see Angelica is also writing that organizations should try to work more at the local level and involve youth in the processes. Only if we really get them into the problem, helping them to live the organization, they would also be more aware on the problems, touching with their own hands. Too many youth NGOs do too much and international and do not have connection with the local. Too much paper and few actions. Thank you very much, Angelica. I totally agree with you that sometimes we really, you know, disconnect from our local communities. This was something said at the very beginning of the webinar, and this is crucially important. And especially, I think, in the times of the pandemic, we simply realize that, you know, and especially when international activities close, that okay, this is one of the solutions for the youth organizations, for the NGOs to survive. But on the other hand, it provided us the opportunity to really look back what kind of things are going on in our local community, what kind of things our local communities have, and come back to on this local level to do something meaningful and useful for the young people in the local area. Okay, any other questions, concerns, comments, feedbacks, or so? So I just really want to thank all of you who joined this webinar. As I said at the beginning, the recorded webinar will be also available on the project website, inclusiveyouthwork.eu. So thank you very much. Follow us. Have a great evening, and we will catch up. We will see you soon, I hope, in the next webinars of this series. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.